Hi everyone, my name is Angela McCunis, and our group today will be talking about directional, stabilizing, and deceptive selection. Introduce yourselves.
My name is Ricardo Gomez.
My name is Holly Davis.
Okay, so a little bit about natural selection, which obviously ties into our presentation. Natural selection is a process or a mechanism of evolution where organisms or a species like humans have traits or different organisms that are better suited to the environment are more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass on those traits that help them survive. This process leads to a change in the characteristics of species over generations, as less well-adapted individuals tend to die out. So basically, kind of like I give an example of a chameleon help adapt to their environment to survive for much longer than they may have thought to. Again, another example would be the development of antibiotic resistance in bacteria. The evolution of the peppered moth during the Industrial Revolution. There was a finch beaks on the Galapagos Island.
So if a natural selection favors average phenotype by selecting against extreme variation, population will undergo stabilizing selection. Example of this is a population of mice that live in woods, and natural selection will tend to favor individuals that best blend in with the forest floor to be the least amount to be spotted by predators. It occurs when the population stabilizes on a particular trait value and the genetic diversity decreases. Another example is human birth weight. Babies with very low or high birth weights are more likely to experience health problems and have higher mortality rates compared to babies with average birth weights. I think directional now. Yeah, we're on direction, so it's also me. Directional selection is another form of natural selection that causes an extreme trait to be favored over others. This causes the organisms and its populations to have a higher survival rate than the other ones before that specific trait was introduced. For example, small birds such as finches are only able to eat small seeds that the earth provides for it, while other birds have adapted to the larger seeds by getting the gene that makes the beak longer. Another example is giraffes. Ones with longer necks are able to reach higher trees than the ones with the gene that has shorter necks.
So, diversifying or disruptive selection. Disruptive selection is a force of evolution that drives a group or population apart. Organisms with less favored traits will produce less, while organisms with more favored genes or traits will produce more. Over time, this causes a group to become divided and put into their own separate groups to be classified from the other. It doesn't just have to be one gene or trait from the organisms to be considered separate groups. Oysters are one example. There are two different ones, such as black and white oysters. White oysters often blend in with rocks and lighter colored coral, while black ones blend in more with the shadows and darker colored organisms. So for the games that we came up with, it is two. So they could both be called survival of the fittest. For one game, students will pick an organism with multiple different traits that the organism has picked up in order to survive. They will then create or reenact what would happen if the traits worked or didn't work. The last person standing wins the game and is deemed survival of the fittest. So basically, it's just the students going against each other to like see if they can basically knock off the other one and see if their traits are worth basically like copying and moving on to the next generation. Another activity is students can build and add on new traits to their choosing of an organism. The teacher will then give them a scenario like ones with weather conditions, different praise, and environmental change like erosion, and other traits. And basically, the student will have to see if their animal would survive through those generations by adding on to new traits and genes.
So that is it. Thank you very much.